Check it out. I used to think Dr. Phil was like this mushy, squishy, whatever. Now he's the only one telling the truth about Israel and Hamas. I just think he's great.
Of that violence, and we are first asked to condemn violence. I find that there's a sense of hypocrisy in those questions when our suffering is not being recognized.
By the way, I just have this exact argument with some of my friends offline, so I thought I'd bring it to you because this does affect a lot of America. It also affects this election because Biden wants Deerfield, Michigan, which is primarily Muslim, and he's losing them. They're coming out on his left, upset that he's supporting Israel too much. Meanwhile, the hard right-wing Nick Fuentes Groyper crowd, the anti-Ben Shapiro people on the far right, are also against any of our help with Israel. The anti-Semites on the far right and the far left are overlapping here, and I'm calling them both out.
And the first thing we're asked is to condemn.
What do you think Israel was going to do when Hamas cuts a hole in the fence and comes over the top and kills 1,300 people? What did you think they should have done?
I think they have every right to go in combat with Hamas, but I don't think they have the right for 92% of the death count to be civilians.
And that's the but. Everyone's like, but, by the way, that is not a true statistic that 92% of civilians are being wiped out by Israel. The Geneva Convention, by the way, has actual numbers and graphs of every war that Israel's ever been involved in. And you'll see that their civilian to bad guy ratio, even in this conflict since October 7th, is lower than ours was in Iraq. And Israel didn't reach out and condemn us and say that we were, terrorists when our body count went too high. So it's, in general, Israel aims for one. That is, people think it's generally acceptable if for every one soldier you kill, you get a civilian casualty. Now, the difference being, of course, Hamas primarily targets civilians and they hide their armies among civilians. So they're going to naturally up the civilian casualty. And this is part of their military strategy. And if we reward it, and if we let it work, we are going to be responsible for encouraging them to do it again.
If they burn an infant in a crib, do you see that as a moral equivalent to a collateral death from a bomb being dropped as an act of war?
The Geneva Convention, or I should say just war theory, also goes into intent. What is your intent? So that if you drop a bomb on a civilian and their civilian casualties, Israel's intent is never to take out civilians. They're not trying to destroy civilians. But Hamas, the intent was made clear on October 7th.
They have explicitly targeted civilian areas that have been marked as civilian areas. Israel has the registry for every person in Gaza.
And if that's where the enemy is hiding, do they have a right to attack them?
No, they do not have the right to kill.
Yes, they do not have a right to kill. You're right. But notice she does a little word switch here. They go from civilians, targeting civilians, she goes to targeting civilian areas. With Hamas, and this is very unfortunate, they have built 300 miles of underground tunnels. That is literally every area has been covered with a tunnel. And so their soldiers are literally intermingled with the civilian area, allowing these women the opportunity to, no matter in what way Israel goes on the offense, they're going to hit civilian areas. But once again, Israel doesn't target them. They do all the pamphleting. They tell all the people to get out.
There are some things that are just fundamental human decency. And when I ask you if what happened on October 7th is something you condemn, and you say, well, you have to look at that by looking at hundreds of years of conflict. No, you don't.
But he's going back to, you don't have to go back to 100 years, 1,000 years. Those of us who've read the Old Testament, 3,500 years. Okay. You have to go all the way back to Abraham, to Ishmael and all these people before we know what to do on October 7th.
No, you don't. That's either right or it's wrong, and it was wrong, and I don't need 100 years of conflict to know it was wrong.
The fact of the matter is that Hamas, yes, did take innocent life. Why did Hamas take away innocent life? Why was Hamas platformed?
This poor gal's driving me crazy. I can't even criticize her. She's so lost. This is an American. This is a student over at Michigan. She's like doing the, well, who funded? You know, Hamas started as an organization, an aid organization. They got taken over by radicals.
Why was Hamas funded? Why is Hamas empowered to take away innocent life?
Let me tell you something. When somebody comes over a fence and goes into someone's house and burns their infant in its crib, I don't give a damn why they did it. It's wrong.
And this is a great American response from Dr. Phil, because that's how we are. We're like, hey, you know what? I don't care what my ancestry is for 3,000 years. I'm Dutch. It doesn't matter. If someone does this, you judge that event.
I've read it that the charter of Hamas is to eliminate the Jewish race, beginning with Israel, but not stopping with Israel, wiping them off the face of the earth. Is that true?
This is true.
Son of a Hamas leader. He's a great guy. And by the way, I have seen the videos of Hamas, the leadership translated where they're saying, wipe out the Jews, they're a one-bomb state, from the genocidal statements, and flat out urging each other to take out innocent civilians wherever you can.
But it does not end there. Now we have the problem of the pro-Palestine who are actually giving Hamas cover. They are participants in the crime.
He's pointing to this girl and she's like, holy cow, what did I just get into? These pro-Palestinian Western students are providing cover because their condemnation does have an effect in the world media culture. That's why I'm doing this video telling you I'm for Israel and I support what they're doing. I believe they are the good guys and I believe it's morally clear. And so I like the emphasis here, but he's calling her out going, you're part of the problem.
In fact, since October 7, I personally don't differentiate between Hamas and what's so-called Palestinians. Because actually there is no Palestinians. There are tribes.
Now, this is true about a whole lot of Islamic countries. They are always fighting each other. By the way, Egypt will not take any of Hamas. They don't want any of them there. You'd go, oh, well, surely they're all Muslim. They'll all take each other. No. Hamas is a radicalized form that no other Muslim country wants. And Iran is only funding them to get at Israel. So they're just like a giant puppet, pathetic, awful, primitive puppet of the world.
There is the tribe of Hamas, and there is the tribe of the Islamic Jihad, and there is the tribe of Khalil, and there is the tribe of Nablus. And each one has different interests, and all of them are conflicted. If they did not have Israel as the common enemy, they would kill each other.
Now, there's one thing they all have in common.
This is the reality of what's so-called Palestine. You don't know what Palestine is. Actually, in fact, the keffiyeh that you are wearing, this is just a statement to show that you really lack the authenticity to represent the case. And what's so-called the cause, you know, this is a human problem.
So you just...
The cause must die.
He's calling her like a Palestinian in name only, like she's only got the garb on, but she can't make the case.
I think enough is enough. And now it's proven, and you are helping Hamas to prove it to the world, that Palestine depends on the destruction of the state of Israel. And this is not acceptable, and we are not going to agree to it. And I tell you something, for the next 10 or 20 years, the Palestinian people will pay the bill that Hamas is caused today.
He's got her. This guy is such a hammer. He's so good. I can't believe he's on Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil, no one on MSNBC will say this.
To you, Hamas and Palestinians are the same. They're one and the same.
After October 7, yes, there is no difference.
Really?
The vast majority of the Palestinian people support Hamas.
Really?
This is a fact. This is proven by statistics and your silence now.
And the reason why he says that they're one and the same, Palestine and Hamas, is because after the 1,200 people they took their hostages, killed babies, killed women at a dance festival, all innocent civilians they were aiming for. After that happened, there was dancing in the streets in Palestine, and there was dancing in the streets by Hamas members. It's clear. when Israel wipes out, some contingent, some military contingent in Hamas, there is not dancing in the streets in Israel.
You cannot even condemn Hamas and say that what they did on October 7 was an act of a savage group. You don't have that power.
Yeah, I think he won. And just because things got a little heavy on this episode, I don't apologize for it, because this is true. Real people over there. We need to pray for peace in the Middle East. And also, I back up Israel to do what needs to be done. But obviously, there's going to be disagreements in my audience. But I thought I'd end on a man trying to steal a Trump sign, but he didn't know that the owner of the Trump sign electrified it. That's your smile for the day. I'm Doug in Exile.